and help does the disaster response offer?
Well, our primary goal is advocacy and case management. And what that basically means is we try to do an assessment of what the client's needs are, the household that's affected, and based on those needs, we try to match them to resources. And in some instances, we make internal referrals outside of the state grant to our Catholic charities for some direct financial assistance. In addition to that, we do offer free counseling services, and we try to meet other basic needs as well. So in some instances, it might be someone that had a damaged vehicle that can't get back and forth to work or to doctor's appointments that are necessary. Right. We'll try to assist in that aspect as well. So we're kind of a one-stop.
That's great.
Yeah.
That is great. How is Catholic Charities Disaster Response helping those impacted by Hurricane Sandy?
We're offering the same services specifically to those individuals that have been impacted by Sandy. So currently we have over 2,000 open cases across the state. We were awarded the state grant with Catholic Charities, and I'm managing the state grant. So conservatively speaking, we have over 200, almost 2,500 cases that are currently open. We do have feet on the ground. We've been able to implement assistance with construction analysts that we've hired under the grant. Okay. So individuals that have a rebuild need, we partner up with our constructions analysts as well as the disaster case manager to meet the homeowner at their homes to do another assessment to make sure that they're not being swindled in one way or another, or that they're spending the money that they have received through either FEMA or their insurance companies or whatever funding that they've received, so that it's spent appropriately in a way that won't set them into a deeper hole of financial struggles. So we're partnering in many different ways, as well as with the community partners in that regard. Right.
You just mentioned financial. So are you giving financial assistance to these victims of Hurricane Sandy as well?
We are, but it's done by case, and it depends on the prioritization. The program right now, because we are not fully staffed, we're close based on the state program grant that we received. But the need is so great that even when we are fully staffed, there is going to be a prioritization, and there may be a waiting list of some sort. Okay. So people with housing, that imminent homelessness, they take top priority over some of the other needs that they might be impacted by. It's not that they're putting on a waiting list and left there to kind of like cobwebs drawing on them, but we do try to meet the needs based on that priority, and if it is someone that has a lesser priority, we try to match them by information and referrals to outside agencies.
Gotcha. Yeah. Now, unlike the Red Cross and FEMA that are right there as a disaster happens, Catholic Charities is really there for the long term, right? So
we are.
When we talk about this long-term recovery and all that, can you give me a little idea of what that means for the long haul?
Sure. The best way that I can probably describe that is there's a typical phases to disaster, and the initial is the pre-disaster, where you're hearing the warnings, you're hearing the threats, and then the impact hits. So that's the pre-disaster zone. And then you go into the heroic stage, and the heroic stage is when everybody comes out and they're helping neighbor to neighbor, family to family. It's like the village coming to help everybody out. Donations start filling in. Then you get into the disillusionment stage. Disillusionment stage is when people start getting very frustrated and they don't know what to do. They've been overwhelmed. People that haven't come forward to apply for assistance with FEMA or any other organizations, that's usually the time frame that they come out. Now, this whole disaster aspect of the typical phases of disaster can range, depending on scope, anywhere from 1 to 3 years to as many as 5 to 8 years. As we've seen with Katrina, there's still devastation there and rebuild that needs to be done. Mm-hmm. So the long-term recovery is truly holding that person's hand through their recovery for at least the first year to 18 months and thereon, depending on the funding that's available to continue the work.
Wow, gotcha. Yeah. How long do you expect the long-term recovery process to take from the impact of Hurricane Sandy?
I would say a minimum of about 18 months. Okay. Because we're not even near the rebuild stage. Right. That's going to be closer to a year, year and a half before that can even start, between the flood mapping and the funding and the CDBG money, which is the block grant money. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at rebuild not even beginning until closer to just after the 1-year anniversary. Right. And then from that point on, we have so much devastation and rebuild that's necessary. That could go on for 5, 6, 7, 8 or higher years. So
right.
it all depends on funding and what the needs are and how much assistance we could get in and refocus on Sandy.
Right.
Yeah.
So I know after Katrina, there's still areas that are still being helped down there.
And that
right?
happened in 2005.
Yeah, right. So that's a long
It's a long haul.
Mm-hmm.
And there's in some instances there's a reality that individuals need to look into to find out, is it something that they should be rebuilding, or is it something that realistically they need to walk away from?
Right.
That's a hard bill to swallow.
Yeah, right. And I have heard some talk about if folks need to leave their areas, the state is willing to maybe come in and help maybe purchase a property and all that. I don't know if that's finalized yet or not, but I know I've seen some of those things.
Yeah, Governor Christie made an announcement, I believe it was 2 days ago. However, it's for neighborhoods. So they won't come in, the state won't come in and purchase one individual home. So the problem with that, that I'm anticipating, is the fact that if you have a neighborhood of 10 and you have 1 or 2 holdouts, they're not going to be able to purchase that property for the others that agreed to it.
Right.
So, I mean, it's an option, but it's a matter of coming together as a community and making that decision, okay, let's move on.
Option, right?
It is a complicated option, but it is an option on the table.
Right, right.
And in some cases, I think it's a great option,
Right.
as long as the neighbors can all commune together and decide as a collective group that, yeah, this is the way we need to go.
Right. It's a very emotional decision, I'm sure. For
It's
folks
extremely
to go
emotional,
that
and
route.
disaster recovery is extremely emotional, and sometimes that's where the real blocks happen, because you have to deal with the individual that's what was affected, their emotions as they're going through this, and that's why I started to describe typical phases of disaster, because there's anger in that disillusionment stage too,
right.
before the real recovery can begin.
Right, and you and I both know from being involved in the long-term recovery group that it's tricky because people are having high expectations.
Exactly.
And they think things are going to turn around quickly. They hear about money being donated and all that sort of thing, and they just don't.
They don't realize that you can't,
yet.
right.
And it takes a lot to organize that and coordinate that and make sure that everything's done right. And most of this organization is done by volunteers.
Absolutely.
Volunteering come together to really help the common good of the whole community.
Absolutely.
And if you want things done right, sometimes it has to take time to do that, and that's the struggle.
Well, and the best analogy that I can make to that is a lot of us are either parents or aunts or uncles, and we've seen children grow. So you don't expect an infant to come out of the womb and run down the street.
Right.
There's stages to that development. Same thing when it comes to disaster recovery.
Right.
And that is, we have to learn to crawl before we can take a step, and each step has to be deliberate and steady before we can move forward into that run to construction.
Right.
So if we can just understand and get that message out, that it's better to slow it down, take a step back, and make sure that all the pieces are in place, instead of rushing and missing a step.
And we'll get there. Now, can you give our audience the contact information for Catholic Charities, the best way to reach out?
Sure. If individuals need to connect to disaster case management services, they can call our call-in center, which is being monitored by 211, and that is 877-510-6762.
Great.
And then they can also reach us on our website at www.catholiccharitiestrentton.org.
Great.
So
Well, that's wonderful. It's good information, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to want to and going to need that and want to take advantage of that information.
Absolutely.
And be able to ask for that kind of assistance. And
Absolutely,
all
and we're here to help.
that. That's great.
We're here to help.
And talking about the long-term recovery group, we also have one of your co-workers that are actually chairing it, right? Bob Hodnett.
Yes.
Is chairing the group, which is great. I know he
Yes.
does a great job as
He
well.
does do a fantastic job, and he's been amazing throughout this whole activation of our internal Catholic Charities disaster response program. So
Right.
he's been amazing in that process.
And it's great. There's a lot of great groups around that table. I know
We
the
have
United Way's been
amazing people involved.
And you have Habitat for Humanity, and again, the
have
Affordable
really
Housing
amazing
Alliance,
group.
And, yep, it's
And to know that these individuals are volunteering
right.
to get this pulled together. And we have a lot of important individuals that know how important this recovery process is going to be and how important it is to the community, and that's why we're involved. We
Right.
need to see this recovery through.
Absolutely. Well, I personally want to thank you, Maria, for taking your time to spend this time with us and let our audience know really all the good things that you're doing and the fact that there's so much going on towards really helping with this Sandy recovery and It's, again, always a pleasure seeing you. I'm sure
Oh,
I'll
it
be
was all
seeing you
my
at the
pleasure.
long-term recovery
Oh.
group meetings going forward.
Absolutely,
And we'll just
absolutely.
keep trudging through and getting this done for the folks that need it.
Yes, absolutely, and thank you for having me. It's been a
Absolutely
pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.